Good evening, everyone. How are you? Want to thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Fran Jansen, and I am with the Arkansas State Treasurer's Office. And on behalf of the State Treasurer and the Arkansas Financial Education Commission and the Central Arkansas Library System, I want to thank you for joining us this evening for our financial wellness series. Tonight's webinar focus is housing affordability, what you need to know. And it is being co-presented by John Hurst, who is Vice President of Simmons Bank Mortgage, and Shawn Karnes, who is Executive Director with Arvest Mortgage. So thank you, gentlemen, for being with us. So briefly, just some background on each of you. John has served as a mortgage lender at Simmons Bank for the past 18 years, and during this time has consistently been recognized as one of the top Arkansas lenders in the mortgage industry. And Shawn is currently Executive Director of Mortgage Sales and Development for Arvest, which serves over 270,000 mortgage customers nationwide. And Shawn's role includes overseeing and developing sales initiatives, marketing, and training. So before I hand it over to Shawn and John, just a few housekeeping things. Everyone will be muted, but if you have any questions, and we really encourage questions, I think by now everybody's pretty familiar with the chat feature, so please submit your questions via chat. And if we have a natural break in the presentation, I'll ask the presenters the question, or we'll have a Q&A at the very end and come back to that. And also, and finally, tonight's session is being recorded. And so tomorrow or the next day, you'll be able to go back and watch this. It will be available on the library's YouTube channel, as well as the Arkansas Financial Education Commission website. And they'll live there for a while. So if you wanted to share the link with somebody who wasn't able to join us, or just kind of go back and refresh your memory, you'll be able to do that. So with those details, I will be quiet and hand it over to Shawn and to John.
Thanks for having us.
Well, first, good evening. Probably one of mine, and I know John's favorite thing is to talk about housing. But in this market, to really talk about affordable housing, and I appreciate everyone just taking the time out of their day to join this Zoom cast. John, is there anything you'd like to start out with saying?
Yeah, I mean, can't wait to talk to everybody tonight. Buying homes, renting homes. I think we're open for everything out there. Most importantly, just to help educate the community on what we all do as a team. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, John, when we were talking about this, putting this together, I think one of the things that you want to think about is when we think about home affordability, I think a lot of folks often focus on the first house, and for good reason. When you're focusing on your first house, it's a new experience and it's a big financial responsibility. And tonight, I think what we're really going to talk about is home ownership, but we're also going to just talk a little bit about housing affordability, whether you're renting or you're owning a home. But primarily, we're going to focus on kind of that first-time home buyer and the obstacles that probably face everyone right now, and some of those barriers, I think some of those challenges, and some of those challenges right now to buying a house are, one is just housing affordability. Secondly, it's, how much do I have to have down? Do I have the ability to save for a down payment? I think people often think about, your credit history. And then the big thing right now is finding the right home at the right price that's affordable for you and your family's budget. So, John, I kind of threw out a lot out there for us to kind of discuss. You want to start us off here?
Yeah. So I guess when I sit down with people, one of the biggest things that I encourage is you have to educate yourself. It is, unfortunately, a lot of people, when they go to any lender out there, I don't think they go prepared, probably like what they should, on really learning about what's out there. They hear things and they're told things, but they don't, kind of like in school when you're told to read the book, like they just don't go and execute that. They're depending a little too much on what's across the table. So I just, for me personally, I'm very passionate about that. There's plenty of things that myself or others could tell you, but it's just vital in learning. And I say, why not take the time for what for most people will be the largest purchase they'll ever make in their life, and talk about studying for something. I think it's important that you cover all things. Some very good points. Obviously, we've all seen housing and how crazy it's been. Don't know if you've read situations where you go to a house and there's already 10 contracts out there by the time you leave the house. And we can touch more on those markets because it's different in different places for sure with what's happening. And obviously down payment, credit, everything loan wise, we can jump into that however we want to. Definitely some things to probably cover there. The most popular question that always, seems to come up is what is out there for first-time home buyers? And, that's an important question. I think that it's important for the community to know that, what Simmons Bank has or what Arvest Bank has, every bank can be different when it comes to different down payment assistance type programs. We all kind of have our own mix of what we do, and they change. And then we all have access to ones that we all share in common with ADDI and ADFA. So I want to say that, talk to your banks. Definitely educate yourself, and just go into it. Easier said than done, but open-minded and ready to learn, because it's just so important. So important.
Yeah,
I think we were having a little bit of a technical difficulty, so I'm going to just interrupt and Shawn and John, let you bring us up to speed on where we need to be on the PowerPoint. So I just wanted to interrupt and let everybody know what was going on there.
Yeah, so we're on that second page on the PowerPoint there, Fran. We go to the. So this is really what John and I were talking about. Saving for the down payment, establishing that credit history, and then also making sure that you navigate the home loan process and choosing the right loan program. Sometimes can be very complicated and stressful. If you're to listen to the news. Sometimes you hear this, that I have to have 20% down. So if you're buying a $200,000 house, you're putting $40,000 down, and a lot of people think, well, I don't have $40,000 to put down. And I think that's a lot of what we hear on the news, when in reality, that home ownership is available for many folks with very little, in some cases, no money down, just depending on the area that you're living in, the community that you want to live in. And so I think sometimes that barrier of having that down payment, it's can be overwhelming. But I think if you understand, as a consumer out there, as that customer, there are lots of options, and it's important to talk to somebody that knows that. And there's lots of also agencies out there that can help you through that home buying experience. The first thing, though, before you start looking at buying a home, is understanding, can you afford it? And what are the responsibilities and home ownership. I think if we skip to the next slide here. Some of the other challenges, John, is does the home need improvement or modification? I think sometimes we think maybe I can go out there and get a great deal because I can find a fixer upper, but sometimes that limits the ability to finance that house. There are some challenges when you're looking at homes that need for improvement. Doesn't mean that you can't do a fixer upper, but understand what's the cost in that, what's the repairs need out of my budget, and am I going to have the time to invest in this property, trying to bring it up to standards where I can live in it. Probably the biggest question is can I afford it? And that's why going through the budgeting process, making sure that you're talking to a professional that doesn't just look at what the mortgage payment, but understands your total financial situation, understanding what your goals are, understanding some of the opportunities that you have, looking at, do I have student loans? What debts do I have? What are some of my goals for the future? What's my retirement goal? Is this house that I'm in, is this the house, my forever home? Or is this, this is the first stage because I'm just getting out. Maybe you're newly married, or you've just gotten out of college and it's your first house. So it's a smaller home to begin with, and it's a move up. And then what's your future look like? So that whole, can I afford it? Understanding that that dynamic, I think, is real important. John, anything to add on this slide?
On improvement loans, one of the things about that's so important when you get with a lender, identifying the different programs for, especially with improvements or modifications to homes. It always happens when things finally start to slow and markets begin to open up a little bit more with inventory. You'll get the phone calls of, hey, I really want to get this house. I've seen where I can do no money down and get money to fix it up. Well, if it were that easy, I wish it were, but it's not. And it's important for you to get on those particular properties. It's important for you to get with the lender to make sure that they know what you're looking at and what you're doing, because the condition of a home can absolutely impact what type of loan program that you're in. And so there are renovation loans out there. In my opinion, I think every bank does it differently. Certainly right now, I think every bank is definitely assessing risk with what is going in the markets. And there are still some, traditional type of renovation loans that have been around for forever. Obviously the FHA 203K loans, very popular out there. But what you learn is not everyone has them to offer. And so, if you go to one place and you might have it fixed in your head that, hey, this is the way I'm going to do it. And then all of a sudden you run into a house like this, like you need to be prepared for that. And encourage the questions to any lender out there. Because the right answer is to say, hey, we certainly these loans are out there, but we don't do them. Or yes, we do them, but here's the good and here's the bad to them. So,
yeah, John, I was just going to jump in. I think it's important for folks to understand the different financial tools that are out there to help them, whether it's a construction loan, a rehabilitation loan, or just that permanent takeout financing. Making sure that you find that right professional to help you along the way is important. And again, it starts with the goals, then understanding what type of house you want to find. One of the things, John, and flip to the next slide here, is, understanding some of the challenges, making sure you are in the right neighborhood, in your surrounding areas that fit your need. How far is it, the distance from where you live to where you work, and also have your activities, school districts, tax rates. Sometimes people they see a payment on television or something like that, and they don't understand that there's taxes and insurance and a lot of things that go into that. And then just some of the normal things, the grocery store, pharmacy, access to highway, parks. And then is there anything, if you decide to go into home ownership, is there anything, if you do want to sell the house in the future, that could adversely affect the value rising on that house, in the future? Is there a, potentially an airport, or is it close to to a railroad or something like that? Is the noise going to be an issue? Thinking about all of that stuff, it's important, again, to talk to, a professional, whether you're using a realtor or you're building, understanding, visiting with those individuals about, exactly what you're looking for. But I would say that probably the biggest thing is make sure you get pre-approved. John, I think we have a question out there.
Yeah, it's, are there any cities that offer incentive programs for first-time home buyers in Arkansas? I think the city of Tulsa has one. Absolutely, and not just here, but others. One of the things with, it could be city specific, state specific, but there is funding that gets approved. And so the programs can be there, but then they can, obviously run out of funding too, until the next cycle comes along where it's approved for their budgets. That's a very good question. As far as the city of Tulsa, I'm not as familiar with that area. A lot of the programs, I would guess, definitely are going to be grant related. They're very centered around income limits and designated areas. So,
well, John, I feel like that was a loaded question because I'm from Tulsa. So I actually know what they're talking about. Actually, there's lots in each community. There's lots of, just John, as you were talking about, grants and down payment assistance through many organizations. I think I'm not 100% sure, but I'm wondering if the question is in Tulsa, they have an incentive out there to bring folks in to live in Tulsa. And in many cases, they give them, in some cases, $5,000 or $10,000 to move in if you're moving out of state and the job's there. But there are many different programs out there. The Arkansas Development Housing Authority is a great resource, but there's lots of, like you said, local municipalities that have options. Also, there's grants that are put on based on the economics of the area. Sometimes there's, if you're Native American, if you're a veteran, there's just lots of programs out there based on many different factors. If you're buying a house, outside of the city limits, there's a great, it's called a rural development USDA loan that can allow folks to buy, outside of the urban area. And you can get up to 100% financing. So there is lots of options, and I think there is lots of grants and opportunities, and it really does depend on the community that you live in.
Good point. That I will always stress the USDA Rural Development Program when funding is available. It's just an incredible product. It's 100% financing. The rates are great. EMI is extremely low. Obviously, the key to the product is designated areas, that qualify for the rural development. But I had to pull a plug in there because I love that product. It's amazing.
Yeah. So ideally, again, you want to work with a professional. So if you know the area that you want to, the area that you're looking at, make sure that you connect again with a professional. Again, lots of realtors have information on grants and down payment assistance. Of course, many lenders out there also have that information. And like I said, there are many websites that you can go to. HUD, which provides a loan. It's called a FHA loan, and it's really to assist folks, again, with low to down payment. But they have a wonderful site out there that gives a list of all down payment options out there that are available through their organization, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which are two big organizations that provide a lot of funding for primary housing, which are in conservatorship with the United States government. So the government kind of helps to dictate what their policies look like. And again, on their websites, they also have specific information for down payment assistance and community grants that are out there.
Shawn,
Great question.
This slide here too made me think, we were talking earlier before we got on, just about the real estate community and the realtors out there. When I look at this slide, it's intimidating to me. Even still, when you look at neighborhoods, surrounding area, what is district, what is tax rates, what's near me, what's safe, what isn't safe, what are these schools like? So the real estate community and realtors out there, I just encourage, get with a professional. And I think moving forward, it's going to be vital more than ever, just as we start to see changes happen out there. So definitely get with those professionals.
Okay, let's because we're running out of time here, and I want to make sure we allow some time for some question and answers. Let's go through these other slides real quickly, and then let's get into some more of these questions and answers real quick. So you can advance the slides there for us. Again, in housing affordability, whether you're buying your first home or your fourth home, you just got to make sure that what to be aware of. Again, as we talked about, seek advice from somebody you trust and that's knowledgeable. If you don't know, ask a friend or a coworker, especially somebody that's went through the experience. I'm going to tell you, that's probably the best source sometimes is somebody that just went through that process. Again, you can do a lot. You can find a lot of information online. You can work with definitely lenders in the community, whether again it's Simmons or it's Arvest, and find a professional that's educated in making sure that they serve the community and that they have a broad plethora, I guess, of products to make sure that I would just say there's not a one size product that fits all when it comes to trying to finance and coming up with the solution. Again, what we talked about earlier, understanding your short-term needs and your long-term goals, understanding the property that you're buying, especially in new construction sometimes, or if you're buying a house, with maybe you're paying cash or something like that. Understanding the value of getting a title report and understanding the title work, whether it's easements or right of way. I had a personal experience. I had a fence. I bought a house and I had the fence and didn't really look at the title. Nobody really helped me through that. And about 6 months after buying the house, I ended up having to move the fence about 2 feet over because it was in an easement. And things you wouldn't think about, because you go buy a house, you see a fence is up and you assume that that's all part of the property. But sometimes the cable guy has to be able to have access to that alley or something like that. The other thing is realistically understanding how long do you plan to live in the home? When do you plan to move? What are you going to do? Are you going to sell it? Are you going to keep it for investment? And when you're ready to move to the next home, what sources of down payment will you need? And John, what's more important, I guess, than down payment is there's also closing cost and understanding, oh my goodness, that's a lot of money I've got to put into it. But sometimes you can take advantage as this market is changing very quickly. Sometimes builders and sellers will put incentives where they'll pay closing costs. A lot of times you can finance in the closing cost into your into the loan, but really understanding all of that and what your total costs are. The great thing is make sure that, again, you are budget minded. You go out there and you get a pre-qualification. Some folks call it a pre-approval, but getting ahead of it to understand what is going to be involved when I buy a house. Let's skip to the next slide real quick. John, I'll let you just kind of go over this a little bit here.
Yeah, so loan to value and DTI. DTI is debt to income ratio. I want to point out something I had wrote down a second ago too. A lot of times when we talk about first-time home buyer, people need to realize that most actually of all these programs, you don't have to be a first-time home buyer. You just have to be someone who doesn't own a home. And I think that's something that doesn't get said enough out there, that we're so centered on targeting first-time home buyers that we forget, hey, I can go do this as long as I don't own a home. Technically, I can still be that first-time home buyer. On down payment, without getting too much into it, I'll always say, if you have money to put down, it's the best way to do it. Your own money, putting it to work will always be better from a financial standpoint, a cost standpoint, an equity standpoint, and quite frankly, just the way that you even can negotiate a contract. So when you get with a mortgage professional, especially now, because with rates going up like what they have, I think it's a great time to take a step back and really try to save that money, because each level, if you do 5% down versus 10% down versus 15% down versus 20% down, there is definitely a difference in what the rate could be. More importantly, what mortgage insurance could be. Same thing when you take FHA loans, which do as little as 3.5%. And to the question about the assistance programs that go with these, they do with conventional or FHA. But it's vital for what loan program you choose, not to mention your debt ratio. The other thing,
John.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No,
Go ahead.
Say, the shorter amortization for a home loan to build equity faster. I love that point. One thing that I go back to sitting down with somebody, if you sit down, talk about your goals. The person needs to be asking you, hey, I know you want this house, but let's talk about it. You're 22. Do you plan to get married? Do you plan to have kids? The job that you're in, do you see yourself living here 4 and 5 years from now? Like, those questions are important, because sometimes those shorter amortizations, even though you can build equity faster, I think the professional can help you to look how to use your money as a whole to put yourself in a better position based on what those goals are.
Yeah, John, exactly. You are really, that right track. And, there, again, we talk about, there's lots of experts. I think some folks have probably heard of Dave Ramsey or some of these other financial folks that are out there. And, one of the things is, if you can take the lowest amount of term to get your house paid off quickly, great. Not necessarily having a large debt load. But again, you've got to understand all of your goals and your solution. Understanding is a 60-month mortgage, only 5 years. Is that doable? Or, looking at something 30 years, and you look at something 30 years and you're going, well, I haven't even been on this earth 30 years. And now I'm about to take a mortgage that's 30 years. Well, understanding that that's a tool and how that works, again, is something that's really important to make sure you understand when you do get into home ownership. We'll go ahead and flip to the next slide here. John, one of the things I think a lot of folks forget, it's the maintenance. And sometimes this is why renting can be actually, for a lot of folks' lifestyle, might fit that lifestyle, because, renting, typically you have somebody that's taking care of the landscaping, somebody that if the stove goes out, well, I've got, an apartment complex, or I've got whoever I'm renting from, they're going to be responsible for that. But when you go to buy a house, unless you get, a warranty or it's a new builder or something like that, you're responsible. That plumbing breaks, all of a sudden, carpet and stuff like that. Well, you're responsible. You got to think about insurance needs and the different things. And when you're looking at a house, right now, John, it's a hot market, and sometimes people rush to get that house without really going through a thorough process. But understanding, getting a home inspection is important, especially if it's your
Yes.
first house. Taking that time and getting that home inspection, because I think a lot of first-time home buyers. I'm not a builder. That's not my forte. I could see a house and it looks good. Oh, I see that crack. Oh, that's probably just normal. But that might be a bigger issue. Understanding, having a professional look at the house before you buy it, and looking at that, and not being in such a hurry to buy because of the market, especially if it's your first home, making sure you understand what you're getting into and that there are lots of options that can help you make sure you're buying the right house. Things like that are an appraisal, making sure is the value of this house really worth the market that we're in. The prices rose so quick. Sometimes the difference between what for lending purposes, what a buyer might pay and what a seller may sell it for doesn't necessarily meet the market condition over time. And, getting an appraisal really helps to look at what's the value, the real historic value of that house. And again, it's a look back, but it's a lot of things that lenders look at when they're going to lend money on that home for 30 plus years. Understanding the roof, is the roof old? Has it had hail damage? Again, this is what an inspection will do for you. And then deferred maintenance. That house looks good now, but all of a sudden you see, is that going to be the paint color? Or understanding that, if you live in Arkansas, just over time, because of the humid summers that we have, and then the cool winters that we get, you get cracks and you've got to repaint your house, and understanding if this house has paint or does it have siding. If it's siding, is it a washable siding, or is this one that is this something I'm going to have to power wash? Anyway, there's lots of things to think about when buying a home. Move over to the next slide here. John, this is probably what it's all about right here. Your home is the place of belonging. It's security. One of the biggest things, I think, at the end of the day, and I think just going through everything over the last few years, through COVID or whatever, for some of us, home is the place that we spend the majority of our time. A lot of folks had to work from home. So making sure that you are in the right place, one that financially fits your need, but also, it's a place that you want to go home to, you want to go back to, and can you build that future there? So, John, we got some don'ts here. You might go over those.
I'm a huge, but do not let emotion take over. I always joke with folks, the only time emotion takes over is if you look at me and you say, I love this house, I'm going to die in this house. Emotion can be perhaps the biggest downfall to me in buying a home. Earlier also is inspection. I can't stress this enough. And Shawn, sorry to go backwards. Whenever you said that, I can't say enough how important a home inspection is. And for the home inspectors out there, that the money that you spend on that, I promise you, is worth every single dime and more. Unless you just know how to look at a house or crawl underneath the house in crawl space, where I'm frantic of snakes, so I could say I never would want to do it, but it's just vital. So I wanted to bring that up real quick. Also, I want to go back to what you had mentioned earlier, Shawn, about, trying to think a little bit forward. I think people, when they think about, I just want to get a house, they don't think about what life looks like, 1, 2, or 3 years down the road. And that was a great point earlier. So when we say that, features about a house, the last thing you want to do is become emotionally tied all of a sudden. You walk in and now the day is coming, you close on that house, and you might be looking at yourself in the mirror. You might be looking at your spouse and just being like, well, it doesn't have this, so it's a great point earlier about, slow down, think about the things you want. You're back to goals, always back to goals.
John, again, we talked about, sometimes your lifestyle of determining, is my life, should I rent or should I own? Do I know I'm only going to be here for a year, so maybe I only want to rent? Or I know that I'm only going to be in this house and I've got, I'm looking at doing this, or I'm saving up for my forever home. But also, I think it's important for folks to think about, the different types of housing that's out there, whether it's manufactured home, which is an affordable cost, especially in Arkansas, because there's lots of land. But looking at manufactured homes, they're not built the way they used to be built. They are built in many cases to very high standards. And, talking to somebody about that, it's important. Condos, townhomes, we talked about, hey, am I responsible? But if you get into a condo, a lot of times you've got somebody that's responsible because you pay a homeowners association or a condo due that takes care of that. So there are ways to have home ownership, but yet still have some of the freedom. Maybe you don't want to take care of a yard, or you don't want to have to worry about the upkeep of the outside and stuff like that. So I think understanding the different options and the fees that you're moving into, or that you live in now, and being open-minded too, especially if you are thinking about housing affordability, thinking about some of that new technology, whether it's construction, again, manufactured homes, some of these modular built homes where they're built offsite and then constructed on a piece of property that you've purchased. Just understanding all the dynamics and looking at, sometimes we get out there and we look, I need to go find that house, but there's a lot of alternatives out there for folks. We'll go to this last slide here, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers here. Again, housing affordability, don't be afraid to become a homeowner. In America, it's still, home is one of the best sources of building wealth for most people. In fact, for the majority of folks, their home is their largest asset. And it can be, but make sure you do all your homework up front. Weigh your options. Does renting fit my lifestyle, or is purchasing that home and locking in a rate today and understanding what my fixed costs are to some extent over a certain period of time? Again, consider all the facts. Get wisdom. Make sure you're working with a professional, whether it's your banking partner, a realtor, or a builder, or other different professionals that out there. Make sure that you are seeking out wisdom. Guys, get online. There's so many resources online when you're looking at it. Again, down payment assistance, construction, understanding the communities and different areas. But again, it's why it's important to talk to professionals. Realtors a lot of times know the market. They know what's coming in. They know what companies are coming in. Again, builders a lot of times know the community. They know the infrastructure that they're building on. And again, if you do all these things, guys, the odds are in your favor, but that you'll make the right decision. And again, don't hesitate to reach out to John or myself after this. But John, let's open it up to some questions and answers, and then let's do some final thoughts.
Awesome.
I had a question, and you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, Shawn. You alluded to, during the pandemic, obviously, we all, whether we wanted to or not, were forced to stay home. But throughout the pandemic, we've all seen these, this mad rush where early on people were just throwing their house on the market and getting just extraordinarily, high amounts for them. And then now we're seeing where people are actually asking or offering like 20% over asking price right out of the gate, or there's an open house and 20 people show up and within minutes somebody's got an offer. I mean, as a either first time home buyer or a new home buyer, going back to John's, John pointing out that it could just be somebody who's currently in an apartment. That's very deflating. So do you see, and this is for either one of you, do you think all that's going to kind of level out, so that those of us who can't offer 20% over asking price are going to be in a position to realistically consider a home?
Fran, that's a fantastic question.
You have a crystal ball?
Yeah, I don't have a crystal ball, but I can tell you this. Today, there's a lot of speculation that the Federal Reserve, which basically helps all banks set interest rates, has been really increasingly raising interest rates since the first part of the year. So, your question is do we have a crystal ball? No, but I can tell you this: you've got folks in the government, in the Treasury Department, they're raising interest rates to help to try to slow down the market. But I think the big thing to understand is when looking for a house, unless you're looking at just an investment, I think the thing is to understand what's the right house for you, and is this the right time now? Because none of us can gauge the market. I think what we have to do is find the place that fits our needs for not only the short term, but if you're going into home ownership for the long term. And this is where having patience sometimes can help. I know we want to get in there and all the market, these houses are selling. I've got to do this. I got to do this now. I got to do this now. But actually, we're starting to see in certain markets, not a slowdown, but there are more houses that are on the market, which supply and demand allows folks the opportunity to take a breath, to get that home inspection or do stuff like that. Well, I don't have a crystal ball, and each market's different. That's why, again, it's important to talk to a professional. Little Rock is a lot different than Northwest Arkansas, and Northwest Arkansas is a lot different than Jonesboro. And then understanding in between, you've got Mountain Home and you've got Magnolia, you've got all these other areas in Arkansas, and each one of their markets are different. Like Northwest Arkansas, I think they just saw 20 some odd % appreciation year over year over year, but yet you get in some of the outlying areas around Arkansas. Again, like I said, just Huntsville, or like I said, Magnolia or Pine Bluff, they haven't seen that big of appreciation rate. Again, we don't have a crystal ball, but I think the thing about home ownership is, can you find the right house, and does it make sense today? Don't rush into it. Take time. But it over time, housing has considered to be an asset that has appreciated. Even back in the 80s, when interest rates were 21%, real estate continued to grow. It never really went backwards. Now, markets have corrections, just like any market, but housing, even through the Great Recession we had, stayed good. There were times you didn't have appreciation. In fact, in some markets, it went down. But for Arkansas, it's been very steady year over year, and I think that's what you have to think about.
Yeah,
John.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, no question about it. Arkansas, even we hear a lot of people talk about 2006 and 2007. We rode the storm very well. The state has always done well. We don't see those, where it could go up by 25%, then it dips by 35% type markets. We're very stable. I was actually pulling this up. There's a lot of data that is going to be hitting the markets, I think, especially in the next 6 weeks for sure. But and I found this one interesting. I finally found it. But there was a Google search where people, type in homes for sale. And the data showed that for the week ending September 3rd, that it was down 25% from a year earlier. And I love that because, we make references online, and I am the world's worst about going in and Googling everything. But I think that shows now is actually, if I'm a renter or I'm a homeowner, I'm actually excited now to get in the market. And I say that because during COVID with renting, nobody wanted to move. People kind of sat still. So what happened? Rents went up. I dare to even say people didn't take care of property as well that were the owners of the property. And then with housing, we all know that story. And Brandy, what you were saying about, when you go in and you make offers of, and there are offers out there that 10 or 15 of them have already hit. That is slowing down. Now there still are pockets for, particular price ranges because of what's happened with cost of construction, because you can't build it for what it might be now in a little bit lower segment. But I think it's an exciting time, and I think it's going to get better. It doesn't feel like it. I mean, rates are obviously higher, but things are happening for where we have what's true balance, not just in the homeowner markets, but also in the rental markets. So I think there's some positive stuff happening.
Yeah, and we'll kind of go to your next question, but on that, understanding interest rates have risen, but again, interest rates, if you were to look over time, are still at really lows. If you were to look over the last 30 plus years, they're still at lows. On a 30-year, you might be looking at 6.5%. But there are other mortgage programs, other outlets that you can look at that have interest rates that are lower, but understanding what those options are. There's, like I said, you've got fixed rate loans. You have what's called ARMs, adjustable rate mortgages. And sometimes folks hear that and they get concerned. Oh, I can't do that. But actually, adjustable rate mortgages now, basically, they changed under, the last basically that great recession that we came out of, probably about 12 years ago. And they're a lot different. They're very much consumer friendly. They have a fixed amount over a certain amount of time. You can get a 3, 7, 5, 10, 15 year where you have a fixed rate. But then you've got to understand that when that fixed rate's out, a lot of those have caps that keep it from going up or down by too much. But there's a lot of solutions. And again, that's why I'll say, seek out a professional when you can and as often as you can. Fran,
Right.
You have another question?
Well, I was, as we kind of wind it down here, and I know you had mentioned earlier, but for the sake of just maybe making some notes or a reminder, when you were talking about the different grants that are out there, I thought that was very fascinating, but it's overwhelming. Where would you mentioned HUD, but are there certain websites that if I wanted to research tonight or tomorrow, given whatever my particular situation is there a one-stop shop or one or two websites where I can go just to kind of get a general idea of all the variables out there?
John, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, one thing about one-stop shop, it's something that we alluded to earlier, and it's important, is a lot of lenders have different things available. They have their own in-house type products. And so, if you go out there to the USDA's website, you go out there to an ADFA's website, I still will say—
What's ADFA? What is that?
Say that again.
What is ADFA? You said an ADFA website. Yeah, I didn't know.
It's the Arkansas Development Housing Authority.
Okay.
So they provide lots of different types of funding and loans that banks participate in with them, and they have many products that have down payment assistance, different grants, lots of different things that are out there. Okay. And John, to your point, there's not one probably site for everything because there are just so many different options. Again, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac on their website, you can go to their website, FannieMae.com or FreddieMac.com. They're both out there. You can click on their website and then type in down payment assistance, and they actually pull up a map in the certain areas, and you can see potentially through them what down payment assistance are available. Again, there's a lot of things to know. Again, are you a veteran? Are you Native American? Are you in a certain economic where you make less than a certain amount? There's all kinds of different things, and it's complicated. So get out online, but then I would also go seek counsel through a housing authority. Many of our municipalities have different types of housing authority. The Little Rock Housing Authority, I think Northwest Arkansas, different agencies like that. Consumer credit counseling in many of our areas also are great solutions for folks to visit with and to look for valuable options that are available.
I was going to say too, on the, I was holding my head with blanks. I always want to say housing authority, but the Arkansas Development Finance Authority, it's at the adfa.arkansas.gov on that particular one. So,
Okay, great. Awesome. All right. Well, this was a lot of information. I'm personally glad that we recorded this because I think we'll be able to go back and take a look at some of the PowerPoint questions. Those are all very good. I understand about the emotion. Like you said, you walk into a house and you're like, this is it. And sometimes you just need to sleep on it and make sure that you're getting into what you can afford. So I really appreciate both of your insights and your time this evening. And I really appreciate the folks who joined us online. And before we go, I do just want to let everybody know we will have 2 more of these. Next month, October, is Cybersecurity Month. So you'll see this all over. I mean, it's obviously a huge deal. But we're going to have somebody, Lee Watson, who is with the Forge Institute. It's based here in Little Rock, but he works nationally and internationally. And he's going to talk about avoiding identity theft and how to stay cyber safe, and really just have some very basic tools that we can use to be a little bit more aware when we're online, especially with Christmas and holiday shopping coming up, and how to maybe identify who some of the bad actors are out there. So that again is October 11th, and you can go ahead and go to the CAL's website. They've got a registration tab ready for that, so you can go ahead and get in the system. And just please, and you can also go back and watch some of the other. We had a session in April, one in May, and one in June. So if you go to the Financial Education Commission's website, you can go back and watch those if you want to. So, well, thank you, everybody. We appreciate you, and I hope you all have a great rest of your evening and your week. Thank you.